In this section, we're going to talk about the importance of playing with a metronome. Now, I've been in a lot of discussions with people, and some drummers actually told me they don't think it's important to play with the metronome. And generally, those are kind of old-school drummers who grew up in the 50s and 60s, and none of their music was really done to click. It was just all recorded live off the floor, which is extremely impressive because they only had one shot at it. But engineers and producers nowadays are used to having everything to a click track so they can edit it the way they want. And that's just the way music is being written nowadays. It's just different than the way it used to be. So as a drummer in today's market, you need to know how to play with a click track. You need to know how to manipulate it. You need to know how to not think of it as a click track, but just another member of the band, like your buddy standing there holding a cowbell. And you need to be able to just jam with it. Okay? And so I used to practice this all the time just because I wanted to do a lot of session work, and I still love doing session work. Of all the shows I've done, I've played in front of thousands and thousands of people. I've toured all across the US and all into Europe. I still prefer a studio with me, an artist, and a producer over all that. I just think it's more fun. I can get instant results. I can play something. I can go listen to it. It suits my personality better. Everyone's different. You might want to go play live. And if you do play live and you're playing with a certain artist, they might want you to play with a click track. Or if that artist has what's called backing tracks, then they're going to want you to play with pre-recorded tracks. So they have like 5 musicians on stage. They have some pre-recorded tracks. Generally, it's like a string part or maybe a piano part if the piano player is missing. And then you have to play with that, and you have to be dead on. If you're not dead on with that metronome, it sounds horrible because that track keeps going. That track is not playing to you. And that's the beauty of a metronome. Now, just because the metronome is robotic and it's a computer doesn't mean you have to play robotic and doesn't mean you have to be a computer. I heard this analogy a long time ago, and they said each note or each count within a bar, if you think of it as like this big, so a count goes from here all the way over to here. Okay, now that's a lot of space. So think about this as the back of the count and this as the front of the count. You can choose to play wherever you want to play, and you'll still technically be on beat. Now you can choose to play right in the middle if you want. I've heard of some people putting their bass drum a little bit ahead, their snare drum right in the middle, and the hi-hat a little bit behind. And I know gospel drummers are awesome at just placing their different drumming voices at different places within, this beat. And so what I'm going to do, and I've demonstrated this before for people, is basically put on a click track at 80 beats per minute. And I'm just going to practice kind of moving behind the beat, then the head of the beat, then right on top of the beat. And just for fun, I might actually go off the beat just to show you how it sounds to completely train wreck. Okay, let's try it. So you could probably hear I was playing with a very robotic digital metronome, and I was still kind of playing around with the time. So just because, that's my reference doesn't mean I have to stay on it every time. It doesn't mean I'm bound with chains to playing exactly on time. Now you need to know how to play exactly on time because some producers, some bands, they're going to say, we want it dead on the click. And they're going to, if you don't do it, they're going to just line up all your drums or just quantize it with a program and make sure it's all perfect. My drumming has had that done many, many times, and that's just the way people like their music nowadays. And so there's nothing we can really do about that. all we can do is continue to practice and become the best we can be with the metronome. Now, another tip I want to give you is practice with a metronome, but don't think of it like a metronome. So just because it's kind of this bleep in your head, think of it as like another band member, or just like try and visualize something else there rather than a metronome. Because I remember when I first started playing, I heard the word metronome, and right away I froze up. Right away I couldn't play drums anymore. There's no way I was going to do it. And that's not the case. It doesn't have to be the case. So what we're going to do again is I want to put on the click track. This time we're going to do it at 100 beats per minute. And I'm just going to kind of goof around. And you'll see that when I'm on my own, I'm just goofing around with the click. I can kind of just try and shift with time and not always come back in on the one and still stay on the click, because it's just there as a reference. It's not there binding me to any certain one thing. All right, so let's try this. So just play around with it and just get comfortable, because that's what you need to do. You need to get comfortable with playing with the metronome. Once you get comfortable with it, then you can play with it or you can play without it. It just doesn't matter. They'll say, oh, you want a metronome? Say, if you want, I'll do a metronome. If not, you don't do it. It doesn't matter. It's not going to be your crutch, nor is it going to be your security blanket or anything like that. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is playing with clicks in different note values. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to put on a click at 80 beats per minute, and then I'm going to put on a click at 160 beats per minute, and I'm going to play the exact same beat. Sometimes, if you're in the studio and you're having trouble really lining up with a click, especially if the song is slower, let's say the song is even 60, what they'll do is they'll put on a click double the speed just to help you with the subdivisions, because there's less distance between eighth notes than there is between quarter notes, right? So let's put on the click at 80 beats per minute, then we'll stop it, we'll put it on at 160, and I'll play the same groove. So the moral of this lesson is don't be afraid of the metronome. Don't be afraid of the click track. And don't listen to the people that say you don't need to play with a click, or it's not important to learn how to play with a click. It's important to learn how to play with a click. You should do it. You should also learn how to play on your own without a click. It's important to just be a well-rounded drummer that can play in many, many different bands and can play many different styles. So don't worry about the haters, just do what you need to do and practice with a metronome. Now, your assignment for this lesson is to spend at least 1 hour in the next 7 days, if you can, playing with a metronome. Just doing what I was doing, goofing around. Don't worry about if you go off time. Don't worry about it if you were playing a 4/4 groove and then you added a beat on and now you've turned it into 5/4. It doesn't matter. It's not a mistake. Okay? You're just playing on your own. You're just jamming out and having a good time. So I want you to do that at least for an hour before moving on to the next lesson.